Hello there, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily this lovely Friday morning. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Indeed, good morning and welcome from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maukwe Yusuf.
And reporting from Lagos, good morning and welcome. Thank God it's Friday. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
When Chamberlain looked at, Maukwe looked at Chamberlain, it sounded like they both had the new notes in their kitty. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
What is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? What's wrong with having the new notes anyway? I mean, you never can tell. I'm suspecting you with these microscopic eyes. Who knows what else you could come up with? Well, you know, the CBN themselves, they're going around markets, traditional rulers, trying to encourage them. Yeah, I mean, they'll have their reasons. In fact, they did say that some of the banks are frustrating that distribution and they're not cooperating. Look, if you guys just take your mind back, if you can, probably not in too long a time, this narrative of the CBN, it's always been the thing with banks, these DMBs. I don't know why that usually comes up time and again. And sometimes I even wonder, I mean, if you also do remember, that is why in some of these cases you see CBN's intervention program always domiciled. Maybe they are the ones who are directly doing it, or they get a special bank to carry them out. Because the banks, the DMBs, are not forthcoming. And you just wonder why. They are the regulatory bodies. They have all the data and the stats. They are the ones who can sanction them if they don't comply. I don't know why that is not happening. But even though they say, look, on the 31st, if you don't have the new currencies, you just may have found yourself. What's that local word we normally use? And you're going to find yourself in a very tight spot, I tell you. But I know you guys can pick up on that, you know, but what interests also sticks out like a sore thumb for me this morning is the development in Rivers. You know, the APC was having their rally, and then this reported bomb blast. We say reported because the police, who are the ones supposed to confirm some of these matters, say there was no such thing. And that is why it conflicts with what some of the members who were at that APC rally, their narrative to the press says that while they were trying to gather, initially they even had a scuffle. The place was locked, and then they didn't do due diligence, so to speak. Eventually, they got access to the place. And while they were trying to get in, or while the rally was going on, somebody somewhere threw bottle bomb and things like that and exploded, injured persons. And almost swiftly, if I could use the word, because what we normally know of the police is it takes a while before you get response to some matters or investigation into some matters are conclusive. But in this particular case, it was swift, and they said there was no such thing. So, you know, why all of that go back and forth? We don't want a situation where people begin to take the report of the police with a pinch of salt. That confidence has to be there, because if that were the case, then supporters, especially when it has to be about politics, could interpret it in their own way, and you don't want a reprisal. We always say that we do not want that, because even if we know how it started, you never know how some of these things will end, especially now that we're approaching the D-Day. You know, it's ticking, getting to that day. So who knows, we might need to increase our surveillance on the part of the police and vigilance on our own part, the electorate, to ensure that we do not knowingly or unknowingly yield ourselves as cannon fodder for any political group at that to foment any form of trouble whatsoever. So some of those things we think that the authorities have got to put a lead on that. If we could borrow their words, be on top of it and let people actually see that you really and truly are what you say you are.
Well, if there's one state, you know, that is always, you always have to be on the lookout for in any elections, it will be Rivers. Rivers is always an interesting state to watch, pre-polls, during the elections, and post the polls. So it will be interesting to see how developments go in the coming days. We hope, sincerely hope, that they're peaceful and violence-free. So far, so good. The ruling party in the state has been hosting its own rallies without incidents. Everybody has been watching on live television how the rallies have been going, and they've been without incidents. So to hear this from the opposition party in the state, you know, there are many questions to be asked. Now, if the police says there was no bomb blast, I'd like to agree with them semantically. Yeah, it was not a bomb. It was an improvised explosive. Well, I was not even there, so we gather that it was an improvised explosive device. So, yeah, technically it wasn't a bomb, assuming if that's what the police was relying on, because a bomb certainly would leave, you know, lots of casualties. But if they're talking about no incidents at all, because in this instance, people were reported to have been injured. I think that the media certainly has its work cut out for it. Beyond just reporting these incidences, if we do have proof that people were injured, because the story is that this device was thrown into the rally, people scampered for safety, some people were injured in the process, some people had shrapnel in their bodies somewhere, some people ran to other people's shops. There ought to have been photos of this, you know, or maybe people were, the media too was also scrambling for, you know, for life. Because we understand that the incident did not stop the rally from going ahead. The candidate of the APC, Mr. Tony Cole, you know, still went on to say, look, if you think that this is when we're going to be shooting guns and scaring people, they are not frightened at all. So they went on to still finish the rally. But I think that we have our work cut out for us, maybe to assist the police in this regard. But the police, too, by all means, should find out if people were injured at that particular rally. If they were, what was the cause of their injury? I don't think it suffices to just say there was no bomb explosion. As I said, I do agree with them semantically that maybe it wasn't a bomb. Maybe it was... it's just what it was, or what we heard it is, an improvised explosive device. But they need to find out, and there need to be measures put in place to ensure that not only in Rivers State, but in states that have been slightly identified or have been identified as volatile, or not even just in those states, in any state at all, because one minute today, a state is peaceful, everything is going smoothly. The next minute, we hear that there's been a major incident. So the best way to ensure that nothing happens is to always be vigilant, as Chamberlain has highlighted, to ensure that all rallies go on peacefully and violence-free. That's what we're looking for as we head towards the polls. Bukola and Ayo.
Well, Maupe, starting from the rear, Rivers is always a flashpoint where political campaigns are concerned, especially where violence is the case. And this is reminiscent of, you know, the 2015 political rally, yet again in Rivers State, you know, where one policeman was killed and a Channels reporter and former staff, Charles Eruka, I believe, was also injured. What happened at that time? Was anyone prosecuted, especially for the death recorded and those injured at that rally? I doubt it. And, you know, how many people have also been prosecuted for attacks on the commission's installations, you know, in the past? All of these are related. The Southeast right now, you know, is boiling, so to speak. How many people have been taken into custody? At the House of Representatives hearing, there were discrepancies over whether there had been a request, you know, from the Office of the Attorney General to the Office of the Attorney General for the prosecution of those who had been arrested in connection with, you know, violent attacks. Whether this is an explosion or it's gunshot, something happened. I see the picture of, you know, of one of the women at that political rally who was injured. No one wants to go to a political rally and return and not be able to use one of their limbs. You know, one just wants to go and support their candidate for whatever incentive that support will be bringing. So this leaves an extremely bitter pill, you know, in the mouth for those who have suffered one form of injury or the other, and especially, you know, for the polity, for those watching and asking questions. What is happening? Why are there no arrests? Why are there no prosecutions in that regard? You know, when there is no deterrence for criminality, impunity becomes the order of the day. So this is just another sad one. And, you know, it makes me wonder whether we're going to sit down here again in a short while and talk about another violence or post-election violence I really hope not. Talking about the currency, someone here has gotten the currency, especially in the last 1 week. I'm talking about myself, and I'm glad to announce that it doesn't change when placed against a white surface. That's one of the fears that the printing agency sought to allay earlier in the week or last week. But then again, anyone who has access, who has been able to secure the new notes, from the ATMs or from across the counter withdrawals, should ensure that they, do that check, because of videos surfacing online about particularly the 1,000 naira note changing or giving off, that blue color when placed on a white surface. And then again, the concern is that, just weeks down the line for the expiration of the use of the old notes, the banks are still dispensing old notes. Is there enough time between now and the end of the month where you can now deposit all those old notes into the banks? And then CBN officials are wondering and perhaps asking that MDs of deposit money banks may need to answer questions about why the old notes are still being dispensed, because according to the CBN, enough has been released into circulation for the banks to begin to dispense just the new notes. Ayo.
Well, starting from there, maybe the people should begin to say, look, if you're not giving me new notes, I'm not going to live here. You should begin to reject the old notes. I mean, it's just, I don't know how easy that would be for many people to say, either you give me new notes or I don't live here. I spoke with one of the clerks of a bank, one of the banks yesterday. I was saying, look, they have new notes in the ATMs, but they do not dispense new notes at the cashiers. I don't know how that works. Well, they have their jobs cut out for them. Maybe the people themselves should begin to say, if you don't give me new notes, I'm not going to live here. If you dispense new notes, old notes to the people, especially while the banking hours are on, let the people enter into the banks and say, I demand new notes, because this is soon going to become, non-legal tender anymore. So maybe when people begin to do that, and then, I mean, we all know that it's so much easier for the CBN, for instance, to sanction any bank that doesn't comply with some of its regulations. Why is this different? As you said, the MDs need to answer some questions. And to the issue in the River State, I wonder why all across the nation we've been hearing and seeing, as Malcolm mentioned, massive turnout of party supporters at various campaign rallies of all of the parties who we have heard of so many times. I don't know if we have had significant disturbances at any of these major rallies where millions or thousands, hundreds of thousands are said to gather, massive turnout, and we don't hear of explosions and all of those things. Whether or not there are stampedes, we don't hear of them. So why this is different, as Marco said, I think we need to ask some questions. Well, yes, the police has their job cut out for them, but so do we as a people. The police are human beings. They are citizens like us. They have their job cut out for them, no doubt. But we, the people, it is our job to protect ourselves and to secure ourselves as well. So while the police has their job cut out, what is the responsibility of the citizen in all of this? Was it just yesterday we were talking about citizen responsibility, ethical revolution, as the Vice President suggested. And we quoted the section of the Constitution that talks about our own responsibility, patriotism, discipline, and all those things. So no matter what the interests are, we should be asking ourselves, what's the national interest in this decision that I'm taking? It might be a tough call, especially in the light of all that is going on, economic crunch, poverty, and all those things. But at the end of the day, we have to have a nation before we can have an economy. Chamberlain.
I hope many people will hear that and actually listen properly and go about it that way. Okay, so by the way, guys, and Buki, if you talk about staining white surface, for those who care to know, Papa doesn't mind a lot of that staining her pockets. So some people will complain, but some others may not complain about it.
Please, that's my spokesperson. Listen to him.
So you never can tell. So if you're looking for pockets to stain, Make sure it's a lot of it, though. Don't just bring one or two. A lot of it. I have somewhere that you can stay to find out if it works or not. Well, let's take a look at some dailies right away. We'll start with Vanguard newspaper this morning. FG increases petrol price to 185 naira per litre. It's not what you want to hear, I know, but it is the big lead on the front page. There's actually a lot happening in that sector, which we'll focus on this morning. So we'll implore you to just keep it locked right here. Yeah, you can just keep an ear while you just go about grabbing your cup of coffee or tea. Stretch your legs out, sit back and relax on that one. But let's read the riders here for you. Ex-depot price now 167 naira per litre. Major marketers adjust prices, but queues persist. Independent marketers still sell far above new price. In Lagos, for instance, we're getting that product at 240, 250 naira per litre. So,
and these are products that we understand we're paying subsidies of close to 3.7 trillion. Trillion naira.
Aren't we deceiving ourselves in this country?
Can we just keep that money and use it for something else?
Just look at it. And they just do these things as if, well, it doesn't matter, anybody can see anything. They just adjust the prices. The regulatory bodies to those chaps who increase it don't exist, because probably they know that there are fundamental problems structurally that they themselves perhaps might have even been part of the causes. After all, some of them were blaming NNPCL. So what has NNPCL done about that? To say, no, we're not the cause of all of this. And then they should bring out their documents and their facts. But, I look at this other one. It's step in the right direction, but insufficient. CPPE, you need to find out who they are. And then Labour kicks, calls for mass rejection. Where's Labour been all this while? This has been going back and forth like a yo-yo. And
what are they kicking against?
It has to be the increase. I mean, are they telling me that Labour folks have not been buying fuel at 200 naira, in some cases 240, 250? Labour, please stand up and let us know. Well, maybe they will much later. Oh yeah, Buhari receives a Mefele. And you heard that, Mr. Kusibian, welcome back.
Yes.
Just welcome back. Come on, what happens to... Wait, what's been going on? Everything will be reading in the media. Okay. Well,
the president cannot be asking him that kind of question.
Yeah, I mean, we news folks, could wait at that, but that's if you find him there anyways. If you find him, if you catch him coming out and you ask him those questions, maybe. But if you don't, your guess is as good as mine then. And then at the bottom strip, presidency. Why we prefer Obi, Obasanjo, or Tom? If you see this headline, if you don't calm down, you will think, oh, the presidency prefers Obi. No, that's not what it is. So Obasanjo and Tom are pulling their weight behind Peter Obi.
You know who was listening to Baby Calm Down recently? Former President Barack Obama. That's the song that came to my head, looking at that. When you said calm down. If you don't calm down.
I hope on election day when the results are released, that song will play and many people will dance to it.
Dance and obey what he says. Just calm down, eh?
I hope so. Really hope so.
The Guardian is the next one, and they're following almost in tow with that same headline. It says, again, petrol price adjusted to 185 naira per litre to appease marketers. Ooh. Have they been appeased? You find out when you go to the filling stations. Well, you might want to pose that question to the NNPC. Or NNPCL, as they're now called. Secret approvals of pump price, a departure from PIA objectives. That's somebody speaking as a quote. Marketers seek full deregulation. That's what the marketers are asking for.
They just want that.
But who knows? Maybe it's going to be, if we all know, because right now we understand that the federal government is adjusting the date for deregulation to April this year from June, or was it July that they initially said it was going to stop.
Yeah.
And we know that by the end of the elections, by May 29, this administration will be out of office. Almost all of the presidential candidates that have been campaigning are saying that they're going to remove fuel subsidy. What are we really waiting for? And nobody's complaining about that. Everybody's listening to them.
Yeah, but what I've heard a lot of people say, including previous governments, about this is, even the people, it's not about just the removal. Many of them don't have an issue with the removal. Putting in place certain measures before that removal happens. That was what was the bone of contention last time out with all of those protestations that turned out as a result of this plan. Because, look at the sector as it is now, with all the sleaze reports there time and again, and it still goes on. So are we going to remove the subsidy and do nothing with that structure currently there right now?
But there might be nothing for them to steal again. That's what people are saying, that there might be nothing for these people to steal, because at this rate, 3.7 trillion naira, which we cannot even afford. We're going to borrow to be able to fund that. It doesn't really make sense. That's the question.
No, clearly not.
I'm not looking forward to paying high cost of petrol. I know how long it takes me to drive from my house to the office, and I know how much petrol I consume.
That should never even be in a country such as this.
But I'm wondering, what about my children? What about the future? These are big questions. The Guardian is still what I'm reviewing for you. Let's just look at the bottom there. Something to cheer, Joss. A paradise lost, staging comeback on the wings of golfing. So if you're a fan of golf, it looks like there might be something for you to look forward to inside the paper. They're inviting you to Jos, it would seem.
Beautiful city.
Yeah, beautiful city. I mean, whoever did responsible for what Jos became or has become, or the fears that people exercise, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever forgive them. That's really... That city was designed by God himself.
Oh, yeah. Lovely.
If we say so. CBN intensifies sensitization, asks Nigerians to reject old banknotes from banks. 2023 elections, INEC stakeholders offer assurances on insecurity beaver. So that is always there for you. You have a number of other stories just beneath the nameplate. They also have that story. Dynamite injures APC supporters in Rivers rally. Page 29 is where you'll find details. And that picture worth 1,000 words, if you ask me. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
And flip to Daily Trust. Daily Trust has some stories that will interest you, particularly the lead one on the new Naira notes. And this is how it is captioned. Despite CBN's directive, bank ATM still dispensing old Naira notes. Apex Bank insists on January 31 deadline. Emefiele briefs Buhari on progress. Sultan urges extension. Herders reject new notes for fear of counterfeits. There you have it. Chamberlain, don't be too keen on the ones that change color when placed on a white surface. There's still some skepticism in town. So it's not just the Ibadan people that are rejecting the old Naira notes. Even herders are rejecting the new Naira notes.
Chamberlain said he's okay with it. What's your own problem?
Okay. I'm just worried for him.
Hey, by the way, he's a spokesperson.
Is it out of place to be worried for a brother?
To Malkwe. Please, please.
Okay.
Everybody will get you.
I'll let the matter rest. But there you have it. There's still some skepticism in town, and the CBN must address that as well. Take a look at this one. FG revokes 3,402 mining titles. Nets 14.59 billion naira in 5 years. 14.59 billion naira in 5 years. That's quite a number. So much revenue being raked in from non-oil sources. When you put all of the revenue together, it should amount to something. But we're still borrowing to fund, to service debt. We're borrowing for fuel subsidy. We're borrowing, to fund capital projects. And we have revenue from non-oil sources.
You really want to hear my opinion? We're lazy, period. Look, we have all of these resources. There is no state in Nigeria, none, that does not have mineral deposits one way or the other. There is no state that doesn't have. So how can we have more than 90% of fellow Nigerians in Sokoto State in multi-dimensional poverty? More than 90% of the people, and there is a government in the state, and there is a constitution that does not allow the state government to plow its own resources under it. The land belongs to the state governor or to the state under the authority of the governor, but the minerals under that land belongs to the federal government. I don't know how it makes sense.
You know, all of the issues you've raised are valid, but is it a matter of slothfulness or a matter of accountability?
Let's even begin with having access, okay? We have these resources. One administrator governed Lagos and said there was no bitumen. Another administration immediately after that one came and said, okay, there was bitumen, and they cleared the whole of the states. So sometimes we know what to do, we just don't want to do it. Or sometimes we know what to do, we have everything that it takes to do it, and we just refuse to do it. It's all a function of, first of all, we have institutions. Are they as effective as we want them to be? Let us make Nigeria work for Nigeria. And
Nigerians.
Nigeria. Let's make Nigeria work for Nigeria. Nigerians will benefit from it. It's only a natural thing. We talked about this yesterday. Patriotism, discipline, loyalty, and all those things, they are in the Constitution, and we're all acting in breach. Let's just go on.
All of the arguments are valid, and we hope that the managers of those institutions are watching,
and the Nigerians
either directly
themselves,
or by proxy,
and the Nigerians themselves,
such that the needful will be done. We're still with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and there's this one: I sell stolen cars to officers. That's a confession from a naval rating. It's an interesting one, and in case you're looking for details, you'll find them on inside Daily Trust on page 12, to be specific. And right after that one, there's this one: police foil IPOB's attack on Imo Station, kill 3 militants. Well, IPOB has denied in the past that it is responsible for much of the unrest in the southeast. If this is true, investigations must be conducted to find out if there are other leads to members of IPOB being responsible for other attacks in the southeast. And, you know, that just needs to be nipped in the bud. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust newspaper.
This Nigerian newspaper has a story on the unending fuel crisis on its front page this morning, and it is something most certainly concerning, and that's exactly how it's put it. Unending fuel crisis. And look at the writers. Motorists sleep at fuel stations to get fuel. Well, I don't know how true that is, but I can attest that when I'm driving at about 5 a.m. coming to work, I see fuel queues as long as maybe 5, 10, sometimes 20 meters. And not just one station, but 2 or 3 fuel stations at times. Lagos orders outlets on highways to close at 4 p.m. How that will work, I don't know, but it will definitely be meaningful, because there are major highways, including the Third Mainland Bridge, where people, towards coming from the Third Mainland Bridge, where there are fuel queues, and it tails back quite a lot, up to 500 meters and sometimes. So how that is going to work, I'm looking to see. But there are fuel stations that actually do manage these fuel queues right, because they tell you can only have one line of queue. They work. But ourselves, some people just want to shunt, create 2 lanes, create 3 lanes, sometimes even go and besiege the exit gate simply because you want to get fuel.
And it's managers of some filling stations that allow shunting for some very good incentives.
Or perhaps
so
some
practices.
Perhaps some
becomes the order of the day.
VIPs. Anyway, we'll see. Lagos, scarcity bites harder in Akure, other cities. About time now. I'm wondering exactly how we're coping with this. Someone better come out and let us know exactly who and how, fuel price, pump price, has been increased. Even though what we hear is that, okay, there's been 185 naira, but who made that declaration? You may want to find out in the papers. But then, we still buy fuel. I still bought fuel yesterday at 205 naira per liter. And there are still places who sell for more.
Yeah, lucky you, 205 naira. Seems fair amidst the prices.
Oh, really?
Being paraded now. There's 250, there's 240.
I don't even want to imagine. Right under the picture, of course, you see motorists and people with jerry cans struggling to buy fuel. As Marco would say, that's a picture worth 1,000 words, right there in the city of Lagos. It's right under that one.
1 month or more of unending fuel scarcity.
Well, that's the headline of this Nigeria today. Hoarding of new Naira notes. CBN vows to deal with erring banks. sensitizes markets in Edo, Katsina, others on deadline. I'm happy with one of the headlines that Markwe read, where she said that the CBN has said that, look, Nigerians should start rejecting.
You can't reject at the ATM.
Yes, that's why
you have to accept what the ATM dispenses.
I suggested that people. I understand that there is a directive from the CBN that the ATMs should be loaded with only new notes. Whether or not what your experience has been, please tweet at us and let us see, or you send us a mail. So that is there. The CBN had, but CBN is now pushing it back to the DMBs and saying they are the ones that are not dispensing. Who is? I don't know. Let's just imagine that the CBN has its work cut out.
There's a story brewing in my mind right now, but don't worry, I'll share it with you after.
Bet.
After the program.
You better. Nigeria to spend 60% of its revenue on debt servicing. Well, that's right there on page 15. And Mark, by the way, as of July last year, we understand that, so there was a report that said that we could have up to 6.7 trillion naira or thereabout in subsidy payment if things continue the way we had them, and that is something that is very, very concerning. And look at the 6.7 trillion naira is what we could get to. That's as far as July last year. How it's going to be now? I guess we'll wait to see. That's this Nigerian newspaper today.
Well, take a look at New Telegraph next. 3 injured as dynamite, gunshots rock Rivers APC rally. Well, that police statement actually said that it wasn't on political lines. There was a fracas, but it wasn't on political lines. And that I think that community, can't remember the name now, Rumoko or something like that, is divided on chieftaincy title scenario. That is the bone of contention and not along political lines. So whatever else happens, so they're asking us to look at it from that perspective. So
that's what the police is saying?
Yeah, that's the statement.
So there was some fracas?
Yeah, but we don't know.
And it was not at the rally?
That's what we don't know. We don't know if it's, but they're saying, because when they said there was bomb blast at the rally, immediately you get the impression that it might have been perhaps another party or someone from another party trying to stop all of that. But they say, look, there's division along chieftaincy title, that community is divided. And that may have been because of the fracas. That's the word they use. But look at the riders here. Heavy shooting halts PDP campaign in Edo. Election not do or die, says PDP presidential candidate. Insecurity, violence may lead to constitutional crisis. Stakeholders warn. And still speaking about elections, Sokapu raises the alarm over alleged PVC's mop-up in Kaduna. Only unpatriotic Nigerians will vote candidates with bad character, ascribed to Obasanjo. And then you see Methodist prelate calls on Nigerians to vote credible leaders. And when you speak about figures, guys, above this day's story, Ayo, when you say we have a lot of resources, you couldn't be more right. Mining licenses, Nigeria generated 14.59 billion in 5 years. In 5 years, ascribed to NMCO. So just a few areas where that seems to be operating to a large extent, if not properly. And then speaking about what to expect with the economy, NESG, inflation, unemployment to hit 20.5%, 45% respectively in 2023. So guys, this is something you need to, 45% unemployment rate?
Well, let me see if I can quickly run through. I mean, have they finally released the unemployment rate?
Not yet.
Is that the
projection? That is what
okay, that's the projection.
In 2023, yeah.
Okay, I have for you this morning Leadership Friday, and 2023 presidency is the elite story. Northern elders in dilemma over choice of candidate. We're still weighing the options, that's according to Baba Ahmed. Vote character, competence, not religion, ethnicity, Sultan tells Nigerians. It's a page 4 read for you. After DSS arrest drama, welcome back, Mr. Governor, PMB tells Emefiele. It's a page 4 read. They don't have the picture on the front page, but perhaps it'll be somewhere inside the paper. Insecurity. Atiku promises to engage traditional rulers. Page 6, read for you a number of other stories just beneath the nameplate. NNPCL now sells petrol at 194 naira per litre as scarcity bites harder. You might want to read this story and compare what we'd seen earlier with the Guardian and Vanguard newspapers that were reporting. It's 180, how much? 185 naira, but Leadership Friday has 194 naira per litre. Conversation with Azul is on why we love expensive rituals. If you're looking at the back and you're wondering what ritual it is, looks like something that has to do with the elections. We'll leave it there for Leadership Friday, and I believe also ends our look at the papers this morning.
Yes, indeed, and we will be back in just a moment. You all do stay with us.
It is the first meeting with leaders of political parties this year, and the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission is here to present the 2023 Voters Register to the political parties as required by the electoral law. The INEC chairman informs the political parties that the commission has successfully implemented 11 out of the 14 activities scheduled ahead of the elections next month. The electoral umpire also reiterates its commitment to conduct the 2023 general elections as scheduled.
The Commission is not contemplating any adjustment to the election timetable, let alone postponement of the general election. The repeated assurance by the security agencies for the adequate protection of personnel, materials, and processes also reinforces our determination to proceed. The 2023 general election will hold as scheduled. Any report to the contrary is not the official position of the Commission.
According to the Voters Register, which is distributed to the political parties, there are 93,469,008 registered voters for the 2023 general elections. 49.05 million of the total registered voters are males, while 44.4 million are females. A further breakdown of the voter distribution reveals that young people between the ages of 18 and 34 account for 37.06 million of the total registered voters, while 17.7 million registered voters are between ages of 50 and 69. The political parties expressed their satisfaction over INEC's preparations thus far and promised to resist anyone who tries to disrupt the exercise.
We are equally aware of some of the frictions in the system to ensure that the effort of the Commission is truncated in line. But whatever it is that will be anti-democratic in the system, parties will resist it and ensure that this democracy does not fail.
18 political parties are participating in the 2023 general elections, which will begin with the presidential and National Assembly election on February 25. Thereafter, state governors and House of Assemblies elections will follow on March 11 this year.
All right, welcome back. Yes, we will start off talking about elections this morning. Mr. Mike Igini joins us today. He's the former resident electoral commissioner for INEC in Akwa Ibom State. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. 94 million odd voters, but, you know, when that was released after the initial checks, you would have thought that, fine, clean register, perhaps we can move on from there. But it doesn't appear as though that is the case, because CUPP raising some concerns as well about integrity of that register. Well, first of all, tell us, if those concerns are perhaps minimal percentage in that register, do we expect 100% cleanup? And does it, to what extent, does it raise questions about integrity of the voter register?
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thanks for having me. As our continuous collective efforts to educate Nigerians, to clear misinformation on how to deliver the electorship of our country to a safe harbor next month. Now, around the world, the credibility of any election is predicated on the existence of a credible register. Beyond a few things that you have mentioned, today I can tell you and entire Nigerians that the register of voters that INEC has at the moment is a very credible register. To the extent that a few things that have happened in the law, changes that are taking place, are such that the observation which are genuine, clearly made by the CUPP, the good news to the people of Nigeria is that those statutory provisions that would have supported some of these individuals that whose name appeared on the register, that was in the time past could have been used to torpedo the process, are all over. For 20 years, Chamberlain, it took us 20 years to repeal Section 49, Section 53, as well as Section 65 of the old 2010 Act. These were election rigging statutory provisions. Today, the INEC register you have at the end of the election, in every polling unit, a new register will emerge, irrespective of the total number of registered voters, because under the current law, Section 47, which now replaced Section 49, the rigging provision that gives power to an untrammeled power to a presiding officer in the past, it is gone forever. Section 51 now, that before now you hear about total number of registered voters, you hear about inconclusive elections. That provision have now given way to Section 51, which means that today, in this forthcoming election, computation will now be based not on total number of registered voters, but on those who actually came, who were accredited. Now, this is where we are at the moment. And of course, the last section, Section 65, where people used to appear.
Before you move on to that Section 65, let me play this for you to listen, because I mean, my colleagues also spoke about this yesterday, new concern. Many would have thought, for senior advocates to be on this matter, you would have thought, oh, wait a minute, what again with this one? So listen to this, and then we'll take it from there.
The returning officer is not a court of law. The returning officer is not a tribunal. The returning officer is not vested with jurisdiction to exercise judicial or quasi-judicial decision or to assume jurisdiction over any matter that is judicial in nature. When election is conducted, a returning officer returns or makes a return. Immediately thereafter, depending on the number of days, any aggrieved party goes to court, not go back to the returning officer that has made a return. By that section, you are given a returning officer and by extension INEC to do and undo.
So, Mr. Guinea, let's jump right to it. Take a look at Section 65, which has to do with decision of returning officer on ballot paper. So, 65(1). The decision of the returning officer shall be final on any question arising from or relating to A, unmarked ballot paper, B, rejected ballot paper, and C, declaration of scores of candidates and the return of a candidate, provided that the Commission shall have the power within 7 days to review the declaration and return where the Commission determines that the said declaration and return was not made voluntarily or was made contrary to the provisions of the law, regulations, and guidelines and manual for that election. Do we have any concerns for word?
Thank you, Chamberlain. An old woman is not old when it comes to the dance she knows. And I need to provide a very short context to what the learned Sikh have just said. In fact, I tried to call him since yesterday when I saw these clips to have engagement with him to understand the reason behind that provision. But I think that Nigerians are all living witnesses for in every elections, how Section 68 you now reflect another Section 65 with this important proviso, what informed it. But first, it should be noted that INEC is a regulator of election in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to the exclusion of any other agency. In a fundamental rule of administrative law is that an executive body such as INEC that is saddled with the responsibility to make rules, to administer rules made to it by National Assembly, to carry out its mandates, it has a quasi-adjudicatory power to use facts that are relevant, that are available to the agency to take a decision, even though subject to judicial review. Now, Nigerians recall that when I said 20 years, it took us 20 years, Chamberlain, to get to where we are now with respect to this particular session. Because this is one of the supporting sessions for election rigging in Nigeria. A returning officer, first and foremost, this provision is talking about returning officer, not a presiding officer. INEC as a body have not reviewed a decision by a presiding officer. We are not talking about presiding officer here. A presiding officer is actually where decisions of Nigerian people are made, expressed through the ballot. The job of a collation officer at the world level, local government, is to collect the views, the decision of the people as expressed in the ballot. But what we have over the years, a returning officer, a doctor, a professor will appear, reappear, disappear, and declare people to win as winner of election. And that is why I've sent something to Channels Television, if you can put it on. At the moment, INEC, this is not the picture. INEC has what we call a center that is domiciled in the entire state. We call it Electoral Operations Support Center. You have it in each state of the federation, where they track the movement of materials from central bank to INEC office to the local government to the RAC center to the polling unit, and from the time of the opening of the poll, where INEC is already seized of the wrongdoing going on at any point of collation, INEC has a responsibility first to be debriefed by the returning officer as to what had transpired. Now, what INEC has found out, that the result to be declared is illegal, not voluntary, it's being done under gunpoint. As you saw, even in 2019, many people have been returned to office.
Yeah, so
through some
a number of things there. So when you say that speaks to the returning officer, not the presiding officer, who you say determines what transpired, is it that presiding officers do not rely on returning officers to do what they have to do, or is it immaterial? If Mr. Olanikpeko's point is that if you're aggrieved, you should not be going to returning officer whatsoever. It should be recourse to the judicial process.
With the greatest respect to the learned sick, he did not understand the background behind that provision. With the greatest respect to him, any suggestion that we should go and amend the current 2022 Electoral Act that have not been implemented fully is a recipe for something else. The whole design of the electoral process now is to end the business of election tribunal in Nigeria. Why should we ask people to go to court? For example, look at Peter Ogba, who has been convicted. He generated results, figures that are not consistent with what happened at polling unit. The tracking system got that, and everything was put on hold. Take note, it is not the presiding officer, the returning officer himself that will make that review. It is INEC that have the power to do that review within 7 days before a return, if any, could be made with respect to that particular election. That is what we are saying. It's also subject to judicial review. It does not stop the court. It doesn't stop anybody from going to court. But first and foremost, administratively, INEC should be able to take that decision without having to go to court. That's the reason in Nigeria, those who rig elections are the ones to suggest to you that go to court. Go to court. We must be careful because in England, where we borrow some of these things from, time there was when election rigging was an issue. Such matters were taken to the House of Commons, petition to be determined. Right there was no electoral justice. It was now decided that the matter should not be taken to the court. By the time they got to the court, no, let me just land on this. All right, the decision was not taken in England. I should be taken to the court. When they got to court,
Mr. Guinea, if I may come in here, because time is fast spent. If I may come in here, sorry to interrupt your thoughts. I don't want to ask you 2 quick questions, but I know that you can handle the 2 of them at once. One, I think that, perhaps what Mr. Olanikpeko is afraid of here might be abuse. Do you think that this provision of the Electoral Act, do you think it could be subject to abuse? Even though we're trying to cure one form of abuse we've seen in the past, do you think this can be amended? And then it's a very ambitious plan to try to want to, do away with election petition tribunals. You do know that a lot of lawyers look forward to that period. I mean, do you really think that that will go away without much of a fight?
But we shall end the business of election tribunal in Nigeria. You see, the book of lamentation is not written because of Nigerians. We shall end that business. Look, this section has not ended, this section in question that is totally misunderstood by the learned sick and perhaps any other person out there. It has not stopped anybody from going to what they call the tribunal. It simply says, and I don't want to mention names, there are several names, and I have video clips of how on gunpoint people were made to make what we call a declaration. Have Nigerians forgotten what happened in 2019? Are we suffering collective amnesia in this country? That people were declared on gunpoint, not voluntary, not consistent with the procedure. Part of the problem people don't even understand, Mark, is that the current system that we have now have actually taken care of this likely scenario that people talk about. Because at the polling unit now, which that is center of universe, this is where elections will be won and lost. And the fact that political party, INEC is now doing what we call the broadcast of that result, send it to the cloud, put on the IREV, everybody can now see the result. It's even going to be difficult for any returning officer. Don't forget that the job of a returning officer is ceremonial. The cases we had in Akwa Ibom, for instance, was a clear case where what happened at polling units And under the EOSC system that I said you put up for Nigeria to see, we already knew what happened in those particular constituency.
I think my question is, are you saying that this is foolproof? Is this really foolproof? That's the question.
The system we have right now?
Yes, as the new provision of the Electoral Act.
The system we have is very robust. It has brought tremendous energy of hope, of integrity. Look, Mark, I have never been as hopeful about our election before in this country under this time. Because those statutory provisions that will be fighting for 20 years, Mark, for 20 years, that they were reluctant to change. Somehow, the National Assembly member, they had the Damascus experience, and they now changed the law. And I thank Mr. President for signing. Don't forget that for about 4 times before the 2019 election, efforts were made. It was a failed effort. The reality of that failure before 2019 election that has now been signed to law is what we are seeing today. Malpe, let me say this here. With respect to the CPP, talking about the register of voters, the thing you need to know about this register of voters is that all those names of Jamaicans from New Zealand, anywhere around the world, the INEC staff that were responsible, because for every registration today, it is done by INEC staff using their personal ID. They have been identified. I am sure that by the time they are facing what we call the APDC committee, as I'm told at the moment, by the time INEC is done with those category of people, not less than 30 to 40 staff of INEC will have to lose their career. And my further recommendation is that not only dismiss from the system, they will also must be arraigned and jailed for doing something that undermines the integrity of the process. Now, for the register, Mark, let me say this here. A few things that we need to know about this register. Clearly, from the demographics, it is very clear that those between ages 18 to 34, 35 to 49 are going to be those who are going to make the determination, because there are over 70 million out of the 94.5 million registered voters. Number two, that must be noted is that this register total number is not going to change before the election. On the election day, that figure remains fixed, as opposed to political party register.
Well, Mr. Guinea, just to be clear,
right?
I think one of the arguments, my apologies for butting in, just to be clear, I think the challenge that's being posed here, for which reason Malkwe is asking whether or not it's foolproof, is in that provision itself. It says that the Commission shall have the power within 7 days to review the declaration and return, where the Commission determines that the said declaration and return was made voluntarily or was made contrary to the provisions and all of that. So I think what the learned silk, as you call him, is referring to is, okay, so INEC can make a declaration and then within 7 days review its own declaration. Those who will be wondering, hey, what's happening here? For instance, he also cited the example like the INEC chairman is the chief returning officer for the presidential election. He is the one that is going to make that declaration. So if after 7 days he comes back and says, my initial declaration was wrong, I'm reviewing myself, there's going to be some questions.
No, it's totally, but this analogy is totally off the mark. You understand? But I know you want to interrogate further the issue. And let me now explain to you. You see, these are not a very common thing during the election, but we have isolated cases where at the polling unit, and I just said we have a tracking system. We have what they call the Election Operations Support Center. And at the Abuja level, you have the EMLSC, Election Monitor Support Center. It is based in Abuja. It gives INEC what they call 360 visibility view of what happened. But here is what you need to know here. It is that if we have been tracking, we are getting the results, just as the people of Nigeria now begin to see the upload, like those elections, 2 million viewers will allow, whether you are in Japan, New Zealand. What we are now saying is that if from the polling unit, everything has been computed, well, we get to the Work Collation Center, and at the Work Collation Center, Suddenly, the returning officer disappears. We are talking about those who disappeared that you could not find on that day. Suddenly, making an announcement somewhere, they go underground. We put it on hold. You put it on hold, he will now be, eventually, we'll try and get him, invite him, and so that we can put all the documentary process, all the whatever polling unit, put all the results together. How did you arrive at this? How can you say that the decision of an agent, somebody you appointed, don't forget, look at that section. It says, whoever we have appointed, whatever he declares, whether it's illegal, illogical, unreasonable, is final. It cannot be final until, in such situation, INEC within 7 days, calling all stakeholders together, putting all the facts together to say what you have done is wrong, what you have done is right. That is what we are saying. And it's not just too common, but we have had situations, many, where people were under gunpoint, made to forced to make a return that is illegal, that is not consistent with the provision of the law. That is what we are talking about. Well, let me warn here, the danger of going to National Assembly now. If you go to National Assembly now, those who are opposed to certain reality now, brought about by the current act, will take advantage of that.
Mr. Guinea
is the graveyard for contending opinions.
Mr. Guinea, does subsection 2 of the same section 65 perhaps answer Marquez's question of whether it is foolproof or not? And this is what he says: a decision of the returning officer under subsection 1 may be reviewed by an election tribunal or court of competent jurisdiction in an election petition proceedings under this act. Does this create room for litigation, perhaps when a candidate, if and when a candidate raises an objection to a review of INEC done by INEC after the declaration of the result by a returning officer?
Bukola, what we are saying here is this: the fundamental principle of administrative law, that an agency, saddled with a statutory mandate, has the power, primarily first, to take a decision. That decision is subject to judicial review. That's simple. So, if a Professor Ogban, who has been convicted for 3 years imprisonment, and another one is standing trial, particularly that of Peter Ogban, who uttered figures different from what his own colleagues has computed at the level, at the ward level, but at the senatorial level, he uttered the result. Evidence was clear. And that was why in Akwa Ibom, they could not make that return. Because using the tracking system, we were able to cut that process and put everything together before a return was made. That is what we are saying. All this idea of telling us to go to court, go to tribunal. Jonathan Sumption, the retired Supreme Court of England, warned when the matter went to court that, look, the moment you take almost all political matters to court, there will be struggle by politicians to control, to take over the court.
Well, Mr. Guinea, the question is quite simple.
Empire.
Just a second. The question is quite simple. Are you saying that whatever decision INEC made is final and so completely final even after its own review? Just a second. Or that you are saying, because you also mentioned earlier that we want to see how we can eliminate the courts or tribunals taking the decision as opposed to the decision of the people, which of course would be based on some of the resolutions made by INEC, or rather conclusions, made by INEC from the voters, from the decision of the voters. So when that subsection 2 of 65 says that the courts or the tribunal can review it, what does it mean in the context of what we are talking about now? Especially when you say, I want to try to eliminate the role of courts being so predominant.
I'm not saying that courts will not have a role in our judiciary, because democracy is based on the rule of law. It is the duty of judiciary to interpret the law. But we are saying that the process and procedure that are put in place now are such that, as we would have seen in recent elections, nobody is challenging the outcome of the process itself. Most of the matter that were taken to court in all the governorship elections we conducted recently, apart from perhaps Osun, which I don't want to talk about for now, they were all based on issue about certificate, not having certificate, not having the proper nomination, and all that. We are now saying that when we get to a point where we're already trying to consolidate now, that at the end of election, there will be no need for people to want to go to tribunal. And that was what happened in England. When they got to when they went to start going to court, they now discovered that politicians were also now trying to corrupt judges in England. The decision was, okay, what do we do? The decision was that make the election more transparent. Adopt the secret balloting system that was discovered in Australia and was applied in 1856. It took England up to 1872 to adopt secret balloting. When the secret balloting was done, there was improvement in the standard of living of people of England. It was no longer possible for people to commodify a ballot as a means of livelihood, but rather as the ballot became an instrument to choose the best candidate that can address issues that concern the people of England.
Okay.
That was what turned trajectory. So we must stop the expansion of the empire of the court on matter that can be dealt with. Why should we, Ayo?
Well, that is understood. My apologies, Mr. Guinea. As Marco told you earlier, we're really running against time. But also speak to the concerns of Mr. Gbakoba, concerning Section 134(1) and perhaps 2 as well, which speaks to when he says that the Constitution is talking about 2 languages. Just for clarity, we know that the Constitution, for instance, is clear when it says the candidate for an election to the office of President shall be deemed to have been duly elected where being only 2 candidates for the election has the majority of votes and has not less than 1/4 of the votes cast in all states, in at least 2/3 of all the states and the FCT. And the second one says a candidate for an election to the office of president shall be deemed to have been duly elected where there being more than 2 candidates for the election, has the highest number of votes cast and has not less than 1/3 of the votes cast at the election. So one is 2/3, one is 1/3, and 1/4 of the votes cast at least 2/3 of the states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. Just for clarity, help Nigerians understand what this is all about.
First, the observation made by the learned Sikh is very apt, and I'm very delighted that he did one thing, and that is that he deferred to the commission. I said he wrote to INEC. This one matters that we don't have the time. I'm going to provide figures, but we don't have the time now. But the question in that subsection is, which is the turning you should try to talk about. Is it that for you, apart from the having 1/4 into 2/3, what is the 2/3? 24, another, and the conjunction there and the Federal Capital Territory, do we mean that for you to even if you have met the indicia provided with respect to the entire state, must you also have a 2/3 in the Federal Capital Territory? That is the question. Or are we now talking about 25 that we are talking about and not 24? That is the issue. It is the commission that should come out. I don't want to say something on this now. Let the commission turn out. But more important, another aspect, which of course I have made preparation for that, which one of the matters we are going to discuss in the days ahead. In each state of the Federation, do you realize that in computing what you call 2/3 of the local government, you have what you call fraction? Now, is commission going to take the upper limit or the lower limit? I have all the figures already, the data already. But again, what is important, I will provide to Nigerians some states that you don't have problem. For example, in Imo State, for instance, you 2/3 of 27 local government. It means you must have that wakuda in 18 local government.
Well,
18.
As you said, Mr. Igene, there is a lot to talk about this, and since the letter was addressed to the INEC chairman, I guess we have to wait. Yes. It's written in English language, and there are certain conjunctions, certain words used in those 2 sections that one will have to pay attention to. Every Nigerian needs to do that. For now, we have to thank you very much. But we have run out of time, Mr. Igene. We know that, we're going to have to call you back another time, so thank you so much for this morning. Mike Igene is a former rec of INEC at Akwa Ibom. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Nigerians have been subjected to untold hardships caused by the lingering petrol scarcity, affecting economic activities and making the already trying times in the country more difficult. Further note that the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority advanced excuses to justify the first scarcity. Firstly, when the scarcity reared its ugly head at the peak of the rainy season in October this year, the agency said the fuel scarcity in Abuja and other northern states was caused by rainfall, which submerged the greater part of Lokoja, including the highway leading to Abuja, a development that grounded all vehicular movement along that route. Aware that soon after floods and rains receded in Lokoja and the petrol scarcity continued, the president of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria said the situation has continued to persist because of the supply gap created by the blockade of Lokoja. The IPMAN affirmed that there was enough product in the depot and that the lingering scarcity was only caused by the break in supply of the product. Further aware that when the scarcity continued and all the excuses advanced by the stakeholders watered down, the National Operations Controller of IPMA advanced another reason and argued that the scarcity is because of an unsteady supply of the product. Concerned that intelligence reports on current fuel scarcity gathered by our securities agencies indicated that there is a deliberate plan by some oil marketers to derail the effort of the government in the distribution of fuel in the country by hoarding the petroleum products and thereby creating artificial scarcity all over the country.
Yes, Mr. Zerman Mustafa joins us next. He is the Deputy National President of IPMAN, one of the players in that sector. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Well, the lawmaker are almost frustrated, just like several Nigerians, with all of these excuses that players give us as to why we can't just get that product to use on a regular basis, consistently, uninterrupted. So now, we also see today fuel price adjusted to 185 naira per litre to please marketers, the Daily's report. So what is going on in the sector? First, why don't we have this product? Will this fuel price make this product available now?
Well, the fact of the matter is we are in a very complex situation. Why I said we are in a complex situation is the burden of subsidy that government is carrying is no more sustainable. And the volume that the NNPC, which is the sole importer of the petroleum product, that is PMS, for now, have been hitting hard on the paucity of the force of the government. Because of that, the supply that we receive as marketers at the loading point, we believe we don't get what we usually get, even 50% of what we get.
Of the products?
Of the product. Somewhere in July, August, the volume of liftings we had and what we have today has dropped with about 50% or 40%.
What has that got to do with subsidy, which you say is not sustainable?
Well, we are just assuming maybe the volume of the product they are bringing in, and the more the volume, the more the cost of the subsidy.
Yeah, but it's not making sense that if you're bringing in more, you're getting less to pick up from the NNPC.
Then it doesn't seem that they are bringing in more. If they are bringing in more, we'll be having the same volume that we usually get at the loading point.
So wait. Does Ipman think that they are bringing more, as they say?
As at today, with what is trending in the private depots, the volume available is not enough.
So the scarcity is from the private depots?
Yeah, the private depots also contribute by not giving the product as it is being regulated by the NP.
Is it private depots or the NNPCL who are the sole importers?
NNPC is the sole importer, and they distribute it to private depots because they don't have enough facilities at the coastal sites.
Yeah,
that will enable them distribute it to the retail marketers through trucking to be distributed across the country.
Yeah, but there are two different things. Bringing in the products. So if they have a lot of those products, we believe we will have it. Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
So at the moment, they are not bringing in enough of this product.
I assume. I have not had any official statement from the importers, that is the NNPC or the regulatory body, that they have not enough supplies. But with the look of things in what is going on at the loading point, the product is not enough as they usually bring in, supply it to the private depots, and we purchase from the private depots.
So it clearly means the product is not there. Because if it's there and they're not loading it, it means they're hoarding.
Well, it's not possible for you to have a product in your depot and hoard it. It's not possible.
Okay, so if you don't have it,
it's exhausted. Yeah, it's exhausted, and it's the volume that is supposed to be lifted by independent major marketers and all the other retail marketers is not enough.
So, okay.
I am a little interested in the. I want to go back to the excuses. You know, the motion moved by the honourable member on the floor of the House a few days ago. I want to talk about some of the excuses, because this has been happening, as you know, at least here in Abuja, since mid-last year when the country experienced the flooding. Other parts of the country maybe for way longer. And then after we went through the floods, we understood that there was a transport problem. The price at which marketers were picking up or were lifting the product was not sustainable because it was not factoring in the increasing cost of transportation.
Sure.
And there was a back and forth between themselves and the regulators, and I think they eventually called a truce. And we saw that, things improved for a bit. And then now we've seen this again. It's been on and off for a while. In the papers today, we're saying that another price adjustment is being approved. If this is really about how much the NNPC is bringing in, whether or not the product is available at the depots, as you say, what exactly is this price adjustment which we're seeing in the papers?
Well, the price adjustment was brought in by the regulatory bodies. in conjunction and discussions with the petroleum marketers. And the details on why the price was adjusted to the new current price, I think the details is best going to be addressed by the regulatory body to the public.
Yes, but what are the marketers asking for? You are part of the marketers. I know that recently new major marketers were approved. There's been some kick-in from MOMAN, the Association of Major Marketers. In fact, they said they're not going to recognize those marketers. But you are a member of another body, IPMAN. What exactly, from your perspective, are marketers asking for that the regulator is looking at and saying, okay, we will adjust prices a bit?
Well, the fact of the matter, Murphy, is last time I said it on this platform that the whole concept of importation is not sustainable. We need to look in ways and see how best we can be able to produce our needs locally.
Tell us what exactly is not sustainable in it.
Why it's not sustainable is, if you look at the population growth of this country, and the demand for transportation and petroleum needs, the rate at which is growing is not something you can continue to sustain it through importation without having developing our local refining capacity to satisfy our needs. Because importation itself brings a lot of challenges as when, how, and how consistent the supply chain is going to be sustained. Or if we have it locally and we have all our refineries producing, maybe transporting it through the pipeline to all the 21 depots across the country, I believe is going to solve the whole issue of on and off scarcity in the country. If we cannot be able to develop the local refining capacity, I don't think the situation can be resolved once and for all. I said it last time. This on and off scarcity is going to continue until when we develop our own refineries to satisfy the needs of petroleum products from the citizenry. Some
people will argue that perhaps what you're referring to, importation is not ideal for a country that, has this resource in abundance. I mean, it's ridiculous as a matter of fact. However, some people will say that perhaps what is most unsustainable about this is the fact that we are paying subsidies on it. Maybe it's the subsidies that you'll be referring to. But I'm particularly curious because the question I asked you was about the pricing. We're seeing a price adjustment again between the regulator and marketers. What exactly is that adjustment about?
As I said, I believe it is the regulatory body that is supposed to make a policy statement on that.
You don't want to talk about it?
I don't want to talk about it.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
I don't want to go into an issue that I'm not supposed to talk about for now.
Is it that the marketers are still not satisfied, or is it that it's still a...
It is all about the challenges of the cost. The cost of bringing in the product to the retail outlet is not going to be achievable at the former price. With all sense of justification, and I believe the regulatory body were convinced and they agreed to raise it up to that amount. All right, the details of why and how, I think the regulatory body should answer.
So this pricing adjustment to appease the marketers, what difference does it make?
It's not only to appease the marketer.
But that's what
it is being done to make sure the supply chain is being sustained. So, because the marketers are all, although they are Nigerians and they are offering services in terms of needs of petroleum product, but they are also in business.
Okay, I hear you.
If you can be able to go and lift a product, come and retail it, and you are not making any returns, okay, I don't think anybody will continue doing that.
All right, we hear you. So what difference does it make?
As it relates to?
The price of the product that we buy, we consumers.
The difference, the difference in price, are you referring to the difference in the price?
Yeah.
I think there is an increase of about 10 naira or 15 naira. From 179 to I think 185 or 190 today in Abuja.
Well,
Yes,
in Lagos, they are buying for 250 in different places for over 250 in some cases.
In Maiduguri, they are buying for 290, 300.
So what does this do to anything?
We are in a state of very dicey situation.
Can you tell us?
Let me come in here.
Yeah.
NNPC imports, distributes it to private depots. We independent marketers don't have the depots. As I'm talking to you today, yesterday I bought a product in Lagos in a depot at 247 naira per liter to be transported down to Far North at the cost of 50 to 60 naira per liter.
So from the depots themselves?
From the depots themselves.
247
naira.
Not 195 naira? Or
no, not at all.
All these fancy prices that we're seeing?
Not at all. So the complexities, even ourselves as independent marketers, we don't really understand what's really happening. The regulatory bodies, we raise our complaints. We have told them this is what is going on. They should address this matter. We are supposed to get this product at 148 naira, but we are buying it at 220. It's just going up, 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 up. As at yesterday, it is going for about 240 naira in Lagos, 235 naira in Warri, 240 naira in Port Harcourt. In Calabar, it's as high as 250 naira per liter. As a marketer, you'll buy that product for upward transmission to where your retail outlet is. You transport it yourself.
Wow.
There are a lot of confusion in the industry, which I believe the government should come in and see how best this whole confusion is being resolved and an affordable price is being achieved so that the common man can get the product at the approved price. We cannot buy a product at 220, 230, 240 naira. You pay for transportation. For example, if you take it to Kano, you pay about 50 naira transportation. Although your government is going to reimburse you for the transportation through the NPDPR. But
it used to be PEF.
Yes, the PEF, the former defunct PEF. But if you drop the product and sell it at that 195 or 210 naira, that the current new price that was issued to Abuja, Kano's price is a little bit higher than what is obtainable here in Abuja. But the price they gave in Kano is 220 naira. And you are buying the product at 247 naira. You pay 50 naira to transport it. That's around 300 naira per liter. How do you expect that marketer to sell that product at 220 naira?
There are still so many questions about subsidy.
It's not realizable.
Even if they remove the subsidy, what happens to those equalization fund, which has now changed? Will they still work? So let's bring in our colleagues first of all, before we go any further. Go ahead, guys.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Let me just ask you straight away, Mr. Fahmi. You've spoken about the complexities of prices. Just to be clear, has there been a formal increment in the price, in the pump price, from what you know?
There has not been any formal increment to the best of our knowledge. So no one has spoken to us and no one has directed us formally that there is an increase of price of petroleum product.
But there are indications that there could have been, because from what you're saying, you're not getting the product at the prices you normally get them from the very sources that you're supposed to get them.
Yes, with what is on ground, I said formally, with what is on ground, what is physically on ground in the industry, there is. But it's not a formal thing that we have any correspondence with the regulatory body or the marketers.
But there are those who are saying that there have been some form of covert, communication to, I don't know whether it's MOMAN or to your body, IPMAN, or whichever other body. So you're saying that there is no letter from any government authority to the effect of an increase in pump price?
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. But you also said now that you got
as
this...
marketers...
Yes, go ahead.
Not to our knowledge. As marketers, as marketers, we are in business. You cannot go and buy a product at 247 naira and come and sell it lower than what you bought it after bearing the cost of transportations and other logistics.
I asked that question,
it's
Mr.
not
Mustafa.
Anywhere in the world.
Yes, I asked that question against the backdrop of like 2 or 3 headlines on the front pages of the newspapers this morning that's saying that prices may have been increased from 165 to 185 naira per litre, even though in most places people get it for much higher than that. So that's the reason I'm asking that question. I'm sure you must have seen the papers as well.
Yes, that's what is happening across the nation. But practically what we have, just like I said, we don't even get the product at the depot at that 185 you're talking. We don't get it at all.
No more questions for the NNPC then. If they're bringing in this product, why go to private depots? Do you have your depot? How much you sell from your depot? Do you sell at the official price from your depot? And if you're the sole importer, should other people also import the product? Why? There's so many questions, but we have to let it go at this point in time. Zama Mustafa, Deputy National President of IPMAN, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ambali.
Well, Mr. Hundani, this for the umpteenth time happening again. Why do these things always happen between the army and the police?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you unmute? Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So, what was your question?
Why do these things usually happen? This fights between the army and the police. Before you go ahead and tell us what happened this time.
Well, I would attribute it to some unruly officers that you can find in every organization. And each time this happens, there are laid down laws for dealing with them. So these officers are identified and made to pass through disciplinary measures. Like the one that you just showed, immediately I got across the PRO of its 1 division, Major Olani Oshoba. He said the same thing, that, oh, don't worry, we're going to identify these officers and we'll take appropriate actions. So the laws are there to follow when these things happen. But to answer you simply, it's attributable to unruly officers that we find in these organizations.
But, you know, this is not the first of this kind of scenarios. There are several cases, and it comes across to anybody who's watching who might have seen that as though, yeah, they may call them fine gentlemen, officers, trained, but at the end of the day, some of them just carry on with these things because they feel that they can, or as though they were above the law. Because if they know that the law is no respecter of persons, will this kind of thing still be happening?
Well, I'll speak for my organization. We apprehend officers that go against the norm, that are excessive in their use of force, or that do things that are totally unprofessional. Sometime last year, an officer was captured on video trying to search somebody's phone. And when the person resisted, he even hit the phone out of the person's hand. And that officer was taken to force headquarters in Abuja, and it was dismissed. So I make bold to say that we don't shield errant officers. And in the particular video you just displayed, you would see that the police officers were not the aggressors. So we were actually being attacked. So like the PRO of its 1 Deep Nigeria Army said yesterday, that the officers would be identified and appropriate actions would be taken. So it's just a thing of if every organization would identify errant officers and punish them, I think this would be on a decline.
So give us your account of what happened in this video.
Well, we've had a series of complaints about people driving against traffic on Kata Bridge. So the Lagos State Task Force was mandated to put a stop to it. And 2 days ago, they were on that road very early in the morning, and they saw this vehicle driving against traffic, and they stopped the vehicle. And the soldier in the vehicle got angry that despite seeing him in the vehicle, they still stopped the vehicle. And he gave a directive that they should allow the vehicle go. And it was totally ignored. He was in no position to give a directive. It's internal security. There's no war or anything. So he was absolutely in no position to give a directive. And he directed again that they should allow the vehicle go. And okay, so let's even assume that you're in a position to give directive. This directive is an unlawful one. And it was ignored again. And that got him angry. That despite what he was saying, he was totally ignored. And he decided to attack the police officer, which many would agree is an unwise thing because he was trying to disarm an armed police officer. Totally unwise, totally reckless, and totally unsafe. But we would like to commend the restraint our men exhibited because anything could have happened. The gun could have gone off. And it's totally surprising that this is coming from an infantryman. The badge on his sleeve shows that he belongs to the infantry corps. So he should have been more careful about weapons. But like I said, we appreciate the fact that our men exhibited restraint because if something had gone awry, people would not be patient to listen to what transpired before it happened. People would just go, police have killed somebody again. They have moved from civilian to soldiers and all of that. So that was what exactly happened.
Well, this is so hard to watch. I want to be very honest with you, and I hope that, we don't keep seeing a repeat of this sort of scenarios. However, we have to keep talking about it until, this set of scenarios totally disappear from our social media platforms, disappear from our national life as Nigerians. But over the years, part of why we see this sort of, I don't know whether it's a superiority complex, but a rivalry of some sort between the agencies. There's usually supposed to be an esprit de corps, which they talk about oftentimes. Is anything being done to try to, manage this sort of experiences that we keep seeing between the security agencies? Because something suddenly went awry here, and that's the reason why we're saying is this scuffle. You say that the police were not the aggressors, but in this instance, we saw very clearly the policeman giving back his own punch. He certainly, I don't know whether he was defending himself. It's very difficult to tell. But this certainly is a very embarrassing scuffle to witness. So I want to ask you whether between the police and the army, are there any programs being designed to say that, look, everybody has their own duty and that there should be no spirit of superiority anywhere?
Yes, regularly on a yearly basis, there are training programs, joint training programs. And these programs are done to ensure that we all get familiar with one another, and there's this esprit de corps, and there's this friendliness. Beyond training, even when programs happen, we always extend invitation to other agencies, and we do these programs together. Just earlier this week, the Lagos State Police Command held a stakeholders meeting on election security, and every security agency was represented there. So for me, I've been to a training program in Jaji, in an army settlement or army institution, and I was in the midst of majors, and naval officers, lieutenant commanders. Until today, we are friends. So these are things we do regularly. But be that as it may, you cannot rule out interagency rivalry. It's not a Nigerian thing; it's worldwide. You would hear about CIA and FBI. It's everywhere. It's a thing that you cannot rule out. But we have training programs, we have social events, and many other things that we do together. Some would argue that these training programs take place only at the top, that the junior officers don't. But that's not true. At the junior level too, the last year when we did a show of force on the ban on the use of motorcycles in Lagos State, it was a joint show of force. The junior officers all came together from across the agencies, and they went out together. And they came back together, and by that time, many had exchanged numbers, many had become friends. So the measures are in place. But like I said at the beginning of this interview, you can't help having a few unruly officers who would always deal with accordingly.
So, Mr. Hudain, if such, interagency engagements occur, what sort of admonitions, are put out, to inform and shape the conduct of officers on both sides of the divide? And if such engagements do occur, why do we see that these, misbehavior persists, between and amongst the security agencies?
Well, we don't really need an admonition. We don't really need an admonition if we are going to implement the existing laws. So the laws are there, both internally and constitutionally, that if a uniformed personnel behaves in discreditable manner, in a way that is unbecoming of an officer, then the punishments are already spelled out. So once these are done, then it's automatic deterrence to others. People would learn, people would know that, oh, the last officer that did this was maybe reduced in rank or was dismissed or was suspended, and others too wouldn't do the same. So these, and for us, when we punish officers who do this, we publicize it. We are proud to say that we name and shame. We publicize it, that this officer that did this has been apprehended, has been suspended, or has been prosecuted. So I think that's what we need to do more to ensure that we don't have repeats of this kind of things.
Well, it's interesting when you say that you do not need admonitions, which is why I would like you to now talk about the laws, because I imagine that if the argument of the police in this particular case is that, the policeman was attacked first, then the policeman would not have, stood and watched the soldier, have a free reign on him in terms of violence. So how should the officer have behaved in response to that attack on him?
Somebody is trying to take his rifle, and he held on tight to his rifle. So I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't allow anybody to disarm me. And other officers that were there had to fire a tear gas canister, and it dispersed everybody. So I would have done the same. There's nothing else we would have done, except you are suggesting that he should have fired his rifle, which would be too extreme in that situation. So it was totally a case of being attacked and defending yourself.
Well, Mr. Onye, I have a little fear. I mean, I don't know how secure it would have been if someone, if that gun had gone off, would have had a case of what we'll call, stray bullet or something like that. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Let's just hope that doesn't happen again, and as you said, the matter is being addressed. But my question is completely different and perhaps in a way related, especially when you talk about the relationship between the two forces here. Both are likely to be engaged for the elections. God forbid that we had such differences. And I know you'll probably say, this is going to come from Abuja, the instructions on how to go about it. But advice delegations, especially, in the event that such a thing happens, what would be the approach of the police or of the military in whichever case it is? Because both of them expectedly would be dispatched to all polling units across the country. Well, they have their different, terrains within the spaces. So I'm just wondering, God forbid that we had such differences or such alignments that are different, by political parties. What happens in that case? We understand that the police is the lead agency in terms of internal security, but then the military is also there. In this case that happened that we're reviewing now, is some kind of precursor to other things. It's on the roads now, but what happens if it's in a bank, in a market, anywhere else? And at this time I'm talking about what happens if this kind of thing should occur at a polling unit.
Well, to start with, we have the ICES, the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. This comprises all security agencies. So we are in alignment, we are in tune. we are working for the same purpose. So this kind of thing is very unlikely to happen. But in the event that it happens, well, I don't think there's a general answer that would fit all situations. It would be based on the particular situation on ground. But in the event that it happens, we would want all of the officers to restrain from escalating issues, to restrain from engaging in violence. In any case, we are going to be having senior officers on ground to monitor the conduct of these men. So we are hoping that it doesn't happen. And if it does happen, well, we want people to de-escalate it as quickly as possible so that we don't record fatalities.
Well, perhaps what we would require of the police then would be some kind of reassurance upon reassurance for people, because you know that all over the nation, in various states of the country, we have situations where people are they're very, very iffy about going out to vote because of constraints of insecurity that has been going in different parts of the country that you're not unaware of. But speaking to the police, which I know you would say that's the only terrain that you speak to, what should people look out for? Who should be where? Because I think it is also within the purview of the Nigerian to tell a policeman or a soldier, look, you are the public servant, you are supposed to be in this place, you're not supposed to be in this place. Ideally, from previous elections, where is the terrain of the policeman? Where is the terrain of the soldier? So that people will know and be able to say to anyone at any polling unit, bro, you are not supposed to be here, you're supposed to be somewhere there. Can you give us a guidance from previous elections and perhaps what else to look forward to as we build up to?
Of course. At every polling unit, you are going to see police officers. Yes, they are not going to be armed. We don't want too many arms around polling units. We don't want to scare voters away, but there are going to be police officers. You would also see officers from other agencies at every polling unit. But armed policemen, armed soldiers, armed officers from other agencies would be not too far away from polling units. They might not be exactly visible from the polling unit, but they won't be too far away so that if their expertise is needed, they will be able to respond quickly.
Well, Mr. Ondanye, we have to thank you for talking to us. I mean, even as citizens, we're scandalized just watching a man in uniform, engaged in that kind of scuffle, fisticuffs. Shouldn't even be heard at all. Thank you, and we hope that we will not see any of these actions, and we look forward to the military doing a lot more to rein in those kinds of officers. Thank you for talking to us today, and all the best.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right, let's take a look at some messages coming through from you. Dr. Peter Awodi, talking about what we just saw, says the armed forces, such as the police and the army, should not harbor any kind of unruly officers. These are armed forces. The officers and men and women in uniform must be above board, and any iota of misconduct must be severely and quickly dealt with, he says.
This is a tweet from Victor Owo, who says, yesterday, I lined up from 7:15 a.m. to 11:04 a.m. My car got to the gate of the station, waited for 5 minutes for my turn to drive in, only to be told they were no longer selling. I have never felt so downcast. 4 solid hours and nothing. This has to change. I feel your pain, Mr. Owo. I'm so sorry about your experience.
I believe this is from Conscience at Watch 1981, and he says, now that the fuel is being sold at 300 naira per litre, is the country still paying subsidies? Or what is the essence of it in the budget? Or are we paying subsidies on 300 naira per litre? Of course, we'll try to get the Deputy National President of IPMAN back to answer these questions. Thank you for it.
Well, perhaps also to get the NNPCL, retail, or whoever to speak to what needs to be spoken to. This one is from Dr. Peter Woody, and it says, INEC, under the current leadership, have repeatedly pledged to conduct a free and fair general election. But it's up to all Nigerians to hold the agency by its words. INEC must be made to walk its talk. Clearly, the pertinence of these elections to our democratic growth and development cannot be overemphasized.
All right, yes, indeed. Not just talking the walk, but walking it. Well, that is the show today. We're not walking away. It's just time to go. Thank you all for watching and for your time. We'll see you again next week. I'm Chamberlain. So.
Well, Ejike is I hope that, you know, we're not attributing your meal to someone else. Sorry about the mix-up there. Thank you so much for watching this beautiful Friday. We hope that you have a great weekend, and I hope that you watch much later what we have in store for you on Hard Copy. I'm Malpa Ogun Yusuf.
Indeed, make the weekend count. Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
It's another opportunity for you to get your PVC. Please go get your PVC. You paid for it. Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend.